everybody, it's Emily bringing you another Grass River microclass. Today I want to talk about one of our earliest spring flowers, and it's actually on a shrub that we have here in the wetlands. I'm talking about Speckled Alder, which is right here behind me. We're going to take a closer look at those flowers today. And I am just on the new boardwalk part of the Sedge Meadow Trail. You can find Speckled Alder everywhere, all over our boardwalk trails. It's probably the most prevalent wetland shrub that we have here at Grass River, so it's a good one to know. Okay, so just off of the end of these year-old twigs are the male flowers, and they're these long kind of catkin-like flowers, which just means like a flower spike, and you can see that they're yellow, and that is the pollen in there. And they were on the tree all winter long, actually, before they opened up and sort of extended and turned yellow with the exposed pollen. In the winter, they're sort of like a reddish brown color. So those are the male flowers. And then on the same plant are also female flowers. And this is different than a wetland shrub we talked about a couple weeks ago, pussy willows, where I told you guys that pussy willows were dioecious, meaning that each plant is either male or female. So each individual plant either has only male flowers or only female flowers. Alders are the opposite of dioecious, meaning they're monoecious. So they have the male flowers and the female flowers, which are much smaller, just back from the terminal end of the twig from the male flowers. And these female flowers are sort of like egg-shaped, this beautiful maroon color, and they look like a mini version of the fruit that they will become if they are fertilized later in the year. If you look really closely, they do look a lot like that fruit. And that fruit that I'm referring to is this guy, which a lot of people think looks exactly like a cone, and sometimes alder fruit is actually referred to as alder cones, but they're not true cones because true cones only exist on conifers like pines, spruces, and firs. But they do kind of resemble them because they're woody and they open up and they persist on the shrub long after the seeds have been dispersed, which happened last fall when that fruit opened up and dispersed a bunch of little winged nutlets that are about like 1/8 of an inch long. And speckled alders flower really early in the season for a good reason. And it's the same reason that many trees that are wind pollinated flower really early in the season. So these things include, red maples, willows, birches, aspens, and it all has to do with the fact that these trees their pollen is dispersed by wind. And once leaves are present on vegetation, those leaves really get in the way of the pollen being blown around by the wind, and it gets in the way of fertilization. And so these trees have evolved to flower super early to avoid that issue. And another adaptation that these trees have to make wind pollination successful is that often these really early flowering trees, their pollen is born either on catkins, so those long sort of pendulous flower spikes, like the case with alder, but also the case with birch, aspen, cottonwood, or the flowers are on these really thin, flimsy stems called peduncles, which is the case with maples. And that all has to do with the wind being able to blow about the pollen easily. So we can pick the pollen up right off these catkins that are very flexible and they blow in the breeze. And the flowers that are born on peduncles, like maple flowers, are also very flexible, blowing around in the breeze. One more super neat adaptation related to alder flowers is that in most monoecious plants, the male and the female flowers don't open at the same time, and that's an adaptation to discourage self-fertilization. The pollen, the plant doesn't want its own pollen to fertilize its own flowers because that does not encourage genetic diversity, which is a general marker of population's health or individual's health. But willows don't, or alders don't do that. The male flowers open at the same time as the female flowers, but the female flowers are higher up on the stem, which just by basic laws of gravity discourages self-pollination as the pollen leaves the male flowers. All right, happy spring, everybody. Get out there and enjoy our first flowers of the season, and I'll see you next week. Bye.